This video is a little different from the other videos I make because in this video I'll be sharing my personal story of how I transitioned into the role of data science, with a hope that if you are thinking of that transition from whatever you are currently doing, this might be helpful for you. Before becoming a data scientist, I was working as a front-end engineer, and in that role I did not know anything about statistical concepts, data pipelines, machine learning algorithms, and after transitioning into data science, I was able to have a very successful career as a data scientist while working at some big tech names like Cisco and Meta. So in this video, I want to share with you what was the thought process which led me into transitioning into the field of data science, how I actually made that transition, and what my career trajectory looked like after I had made that transition. And perhaps most importantly, since it has been about a decade since I made that transition, how do I reflect back on that decision of making the transition? And what are the key takeaways you can learn from this as an aspiring data scientist? So starting with the thought process which led me into transitioning into the field of data science, main reason I transitioned from a front-end engineer to a data scientist role was that I wanted to get into a field which has a little more depth into it. And this thought actually came while listening and reading to Warren Buffett. Because Warren Buffett often talks about what are the things he looks into when he's making an investment decision. And besides looking at the financials of the company whenever he's buying, the one thing he looks into is that how strong is the moat or trench around the business, which prevents the competition from coming in. So the concept of moat, which Warren Buffett talks about, is very simple. You basically, when there were wars, armies used to build some fortresses for their armies. So let's say if this is a fortress for the army, now to help prevent the enemy soldiers, which are here, come near the fortress, they would dig a trench around the fortress. They will basically dig some ground, sometimes 6 feet, 10 feet. Sometimes they would fill it with water, so that the enemy soldiers who are surrounding this fortress could not get into or near this fortress. And that will help them protect the fortress. This moat, or in other words, the barrier to entry, is what Warren Buffett thinks every good business should have if they want to succeed in the long term. And I think we should think about our careers as also an investment decision. And if we are part of a career which has a low barrier to entry, then either that career won't be very lucrative in financial terms, or it is lucrative currently in financial terms and it has low barrier of entry. Very soon, a lot of competition will flood in, making the whole market very saturated, and this will lead to a lot of competition. And the reason I thought data science has a much bigger moat, as for example, compared to front-end development, because in front-end development, especially at that time, all you need to know was some programming languages, jQuery, AngularJS, and that was pretty much what you need to master. I'm not saying that that was easy to learn. There was already a lot of depth in it. You can spend a lot of time learning JavaScript and becoming proficient in it. But still, when you look at the day-to-day basis, most of the things we need to do, it had much lower bar to entry, especially if you compare it against data science, because there are a lot of things. There is math included. You need to know ML fundamentals. You need to know statistics, different libraries, SQL, Python. So that field has a lot of depth in it. People do PhDs into machine learning and AI, and it is just a never-ending knowledge pit. And when you look at things from the moat perspective, it makes perfect sense that data science is a much better career as compared to a lot of other engineering. And that is why when you look in terms of competition, especially for advanced data science ML roles, there is very less competition as compared to other engineering today, because to be a very good data scientist or an ML engineer, you need to have a lot of knowledge, which of course a lot of people won't have. Now, one thing to keep in mind as we talk about the concept of moat is that this moat or this barrier to entry not only prevents your competition to get in, but it also makes it very difficult for you to be able to get into the field. If you are in the data science job market, then you already know that the job market is pretty tough right now. The good news is that I'm starting an absolutely free of cost coaching and mastermind program where I'll be providing personalized coaching to selected 5 people. Since this is the first time I'm starting such cohort, so I've intentionally kept it free and I've intentionally kept it very small so that I could work with only people where I have a good confidence that I can help them get their first data science job. And for this first cohort, I'll just be selecting 5 people. So if you are really enthusiastic about landing your first data science job and you are willing to put in the work and effort which I would ask you to, then please fill in the application form which is in the description below. For now, I'm just opening it up to the candidates who are in the US, since most of my experience is based off the US and these are the candidates I think I can help the most. So if you are a serious data science candidate based off US, please fill out the application form below. I promise I'll just pick the candidates where I think I have a very good confidence that I can help you land your first data science job. And as I said, the program is absolutely free of cost. All I'm looking for is commitment from your side. And at my side, I'll do the due diligence to make sure that you have maximum chances of benefiting from what I have to offer. The link for the application form is in the description. Please fill it out. And that is what I'm going to explain next on what are the challenges which I faced when I made the decision of transitioning into data science career and started preparing for it. So about 10 years ago, when I was thinking of transitioning into the data science role, the main challenge I ran into was there was no guidance available. There were no good courses available which would give me an overview of how end-to-end data science works. And I tried to reach out to a couple of people on LinkedIn. Back then, I was in the Bay Area, and of course, there were a lot of people who were working as a data scientist in the Bay Area. And I started reaching out to them on LinkedIn and asking, hey, can we connect sometime over a cup of tea, etc. And pretty much none of them replied. So I was very clueless in terms of how to get started, what to learn, from where to learn, and all those questions. So the very first thing which I did was that I went into different job portals and I started searching for the data science roles, and I started making a list of what are all the skills these jobs are asking for. And once I've gone through about 50 jobs and I had made a long list of all the skills they have asked for, then I started combining, okay, what are the skills which are most commonly asked? And that gave me a little bit of a roadmap that I need to know these 5-6 things. I believe, if I could still remember, it was mainly pandas, scikit-learn, matplotlib, scipy. NLTK used to be a popular NLP library back then. So in all, there were about 6 to 7 libraries and Python proficiency, which most of these jobs were asking for. So of course, the very next step was that finding some resources from where I could learn these libraries or skills. For Python specifically, there were plenty of books and good courses available, but as we speak about these libraries like pandas, scikit-learn, there weren't any courses which I was able to find back then. And the only good resources which I was able to find were on YouTube. There were some recordings of PyCon sessions which were explaining how you can use these libraries for different settings. And that is how I started learning all these skills. There was still a challenge of which one should I learn first and which one should I learn after, because there is sometimes dependency of one tool on another. And also I was not sure how much knowledge should I be aiming for, because most of these libraries, when you go look at their websites and documentation, it is pretty lengthy and detailed. But in most real life scenarios, you don't need all that depth, especially if you are a beginner. But anyway, that was a very bumpy, a very inefficient way of learning data science, but that was the only option I had available back then. Nowadays, you guys are very lucky because there are hundreds, if not thousands of very good courses available on Udemy, YouTube, Coursera, you name it. There are a lot of platforms, a lot of good courses, and there is a lot of abundance of guidance. But even though the learning part was very difficult for me, the good thing back then was that since there were not a lot of good learning opportunities, there was not a lot of competition for data science roles. And most of the people who were even hiring or interviewing also didn't had a lot of technical data science knowledge to properly assess the candidates. So anyway, once I had a little bit of knowledge of all these libraries and I had built some portfolio projects on Kaggle, just trying to get a sense of how I can use all these libraries together to solve a business problem, the next step was to create a resume and start applying for different jobs. And that's exactly what I did. And on pretty much daily basis, every data science role which I would find, I would submit an application for that. And back then, there were not a lot of roles open. The good thing was that since I was in the Bay Area, which is considered the heart of innovation, there was still a good chunk of data science roles which I was able to apply for. And then I started getting some interview calls. The interview calls, I realized that, as I said before, there were a lot of people who were interviewing who also didn't had a lot of technical knowledge. So they were mainly trying to give me a business problem and trying to see that how will I come up with some technical solution to be able to help them solve that business problem. And it was not the kind of interview format I've been used to. And it took some practice, but eventually I was able to land a contract role at Cisco for data science, which got my feet into the door. And I was able to actually work as a data scientist for the first time in my life. Getting the first job as a data scientist was just the start of this challenge, because as soon as I started that job, I realized that there were a lot of gaps in my knowledge which I had to bridge if I wanted to be a successful data scientist. My first career goal at that time was to secure a full-time offer at Cisco, which I was able to do pretty soon. But after that, it took me 2 to 3 years to be able to build a solid foundation for all the technical skills needed to succeed as a data scientist. I spent a lot of time learning statistics, linear algebra, calculus, understanding the concepts of machine learning, how these different libraries like scikit-learn, TensorFlow work. Deep learning took me a lot of time to fully understand. And even after spending a couple of years into it, when I thought I was almost ready to apply for these more senior roles at the bigger companies, I remember I had an interview at Meta in 2018. And it was a very humbling experience because I realized I knew very little and had to spend a lot of time learning a lot more if I want to get into the bigger tech companies like Meta, Google, Amazon, etc. And again, spend a lot of time trying to further solidify my programming skills and knowledge of these machine learning concepts, and how can we effectively use them to solve different business problems in a scalable way. This was also around the time 2018-19 when I started my PhD. So overall, starting from 2016 all the way to 2019-20, even today, I spend a lot of time trying to develop my expertise around different data science skills. And that helped me actually land a senior data science role at Meta, and now as a staff data scientist back into Cisco. So overall, data science career has been very full of learning and enjoyable and rewarding for me. So now when I look back at my decision of transitioning into the data science role from front-end engineer role, I think that was a very positive decision I made. Because of working in this field of data science, AI, ML, I was always able to work on the cutting edge technology which was changing on a day-to-day basis, and that led to a lot of variety and excitement into the work. I have a lot of friends who are working in some other software engineering jobs where they are working in the same programming language or with the same skill set for last 8-10 years. But when I compare myself against them, the field of data science and ML has evolved a lot in the last 10 years. And because of that, I had an opportunity to learn different technology stacks, and I could actually see that how my ability to solve business problems has increased a lot because of better availability of tools, better availability of processing in terms of GPUs, CPUs, parallel processing. And now with the advancements of Gen AI and LLMs, it is something totally phenomenal. The other thing I realize is that AI has certain prestige which a lot of other, even software engineering fields, do not have. Even if I go and talk to someone in a small village in Pakistan, and when I mention that I'm working in the field of AI, people realize and can relate to the work I'm doing. It would not have been a case if I'm working on something which is very back end and people are not fully aware of. So I think that element of prestige and social recognition was also something which was very positive about this field of data science and AI. Another very important and satisfying impact of working in data science is that I got a chance in the last 10 years to work on some very interesting business problems. And I could clearly see that how my contribution or the solution which I'm working on can help solve a business problem. That was not fully the case when I was working as front-end engineer or as a full-stack developer, because back then I was given some set of tasks which I had to implement, and I was not fully sure that how does that translate into some sort of business outcome. Whereas when I'm working on some data science project, I actually start by communicating with the business to understand what their business needs are, and then what are the problems they are facing, and then how I can help solve them using the power of data. So this ability to solve the business problems, I think it is very satisfying because you could see that you're actually helping someone, and B, it makes you very instrumental and pivotal for the whole business because they can clearly see that this is the problem and you are helping them solve. Instead of there is this problem, they're trying to build a solution around it. Part of that solution is this task which some engineer is doing. So this ability to directly communicate with the business, directly understand what their needs are, and then directly delivering the solution to that problem, I think that is a very satisfying aspect of working as a data scientist. Also, as I said in the beginning, that the reason I came into the field is it has a lot of depth, which means that it is very difficult for competition to get into the data science market. And that has been so true. Even in today's market, where we can see that it's very difficult for a lot of people to get a data science or any other job, for people who have good amount of experience in machine learning, data science, it is not a problem for them to land a new job. Just because businesses know that this is the problem they have, they want someone to solve it, and people who have a good amount of expertise in solving business problems are very few. So there are a lot of business problems to be solved, very few people who could actually solve that, and that still creates a good demand for good data science and machine learning engineers. Now, getting to the most important part of the video, which is what are the lessons you can learn as an aspiring data scientist from this journey which I had in the last 10 years. I think the very first lesson is that getting into the field of data science, it was hard and it is still very hard. The challenges, though, have changed. In my time, when I was starting, it was very difficult to learn data science, but getting a job was not very difficult because there were very few people who were able to learn it. And then there was not much competition for the roles. So it's just that the difficult part has to be done first, and then the later part of getting a job was not as difficult. Now, I think it is the opposite. Learning data science is relatively easier now because there are a lot of good resources, there are boot camps and a lot of guidance available. And that led to a lot of people actually learning a little bit of data science and then started applying for data science roles. That is why we are seeing that data science positions, which were posted even 2-3 days back, already have received 800,000 and sometimes even more applications, which basically means that learning data science is relatively much easier now, but getting a job, especially in today's tough market, is very, very hard. For you, the first part is easy, but the later part is what's going to be very difficult. But the key thing which you should have in mind is that this moat, this barrier to entry, is actually your friend. I came to this field because of this high barrier to entry. So if you are having a hard time getting into your first role as a data scientist, that is actually a good thing, because it will force you, first of all, to improve your knowledge to a certain extent so that you could cross that barrier and get in as your first role as a data scientist. And then that same barrier to entry will stop a lot of other people coming into data science roles, flooding the market, driving down the salaries, and all of that you'll be able to prevent because of this high barrier to entry. So whenever you think getting a data science role is difficult, I want you to think it in a positive way. The reason you want to become a data scientist is because it is hard to become one. Because if it is easy to become a data scientist very soon, and or there will just be so many people applying for data science roles, because if it had low barrier to entry, then pretty much a lot of competition will flood the market, and that will make the field unattractive for everyone. And the last thing which I would say is again emphasizing on the point of prestige, learning opportunities, and opportunities for growth in the field of data science. I think there are much more such opportunities in the field of data science if you compare it against all other conventional software engineering or other engineering fields. When I started learning data science 10 years ago, AI was still a hot thing back then. Even before that, in 2013, Harvard Business Review categorized data science as the sexiest job of the 21st century. So AI was hot even then, and that led to a lot of innovation into the field. And as you can see, that the field has totally transformed in the last 10 years. And I genuinely believe that this transformation is not going to stop or slow down here. It is just an opening of a new chapter. The LLMs, the Gen AI, and overall enhancements in the field of agentic frameworks, AI, it's just going to explode in the coming years, and we'll see more and more adoption for solving different business use cases across all industries. So the applications and the adoption and usage of AI will only increase a lot in the future. So if you are thinking of becoming a data scientist, don't think that it's too late. It is still a very good time to get in. The barrier to entry, however, as I said, it's very high. It's going to be very difficult for you to land your first data science role. But if you are able to cross that barrier of entry, then the opportunities which you will encounter in the rest of your career would just be phenomenal. Earlier in the video, I spoke about how I did and the initial analysis of going through different job postings, trying to see what are the skill sets they are asking for, and then making a list and study plan around it. I have done the same exercise here in this video to see that in 2025, what are the skill set companies are asking for different data science job roles. And then I have created a whole study plan around it, that if for someone who has very little or no knowledge around data science, what would an efficient study plan would look like for them to learn all these things which are asked in the current job market for data science roles, and what are the resources they can use which are time efficient and also very beginner friendly. The video is very detailed and in length. I'm pretty sure you like the content of it. Thank you so much for watching.